Good evening, I'm Vikram Oza with the big question here on NDTV Profit. Now, if you thought the India-US trade deal was finally settling into those calm waters, well, late last week, the US Supreme Court has actually come and torpedoed President Trump's sweeping reciprocal tariffs, ruling that he cannot unilaterally slap those duties on countries without the Congress signing off those. So overnight, that single verdict has upended months of global trade diplomacy and has rewired the entire logic behind the India-US trade deal. And then in true Trump style, the White House has spent absolutely no time at all licking those wounds, because within 24 hours, Trump has pivoted to an older legal route and has slapped 10% global tariffs and then cranked that up to 15%, which is the maximum that he can impose without the Congress. So yes, the tariffs are down, but they're not gone. And the trade negotiations, they're postponed yet again. For India, this ruling is a mixed bag, but mostly it's a tailwind. It's going by the exclusive information that we've been getting from our tax experts, because this is the twist. The Supreme Court's order means that 55% of Indian exports, they automatically slip back to the normal MFN tariff rates. That's the most favored nation tariff rates, which make them instantly more competitive. Now, that is a big reset for sectors like textiles, leather, plastics, organic chemicals, and machinery. All of these sectors actually benefit from moving down to 15% from that earlier 18% that we were talking about. But there are losers as well. Gems and jewelry and handicrafts who won together nearly $12 billion of exports. Now they face a jump from 0 to 15%. And that erases the long-standing duty advantages. Meanwhile, IT, hardware, pharma, tea and coffee, spices, tropical fruits, all of these stay fully exempt. So no change over there. And that's where it remains neutral. The real pain point, though, steel, aluminium, and auto parts. The sectors stuck under Section 232, the national security duties, they're still staring at steep 25 to 50% tariffs. No relief there. The Supreme Court ruling notwithstanding over here. So what this means now, strategically, is quite huge. The very pressure that pushed India into that deal, Trump's tariff threats, has weakened. There's no doubt about that. Partners worldwide are now reassessing their commitments, and India suddenly has more negotiating room than it did just last week. Even the finance minister says that it is too early to comment on this, signaling that New Delhi is recalibrating its entire stance. Listen to what she has said to a question that my colleague Shrimi posed to her at a media conference earlier.
Ma'am, my question is for you. How are you reading the latest US tariff twist emerging in past few days? Any impact on the Indian economy are you seeing?
On the Indian economy, I think it's a bit too soon for me to comment. But on the trade particularly, aside from the Indian economy in general, the Commerce Ministry is reviewing the situation. The delegation will have to take a call on when they're going to go for further negotiations. So it's a bit too early for me to comment.
You heard the finance minister. What about Trump himself? So far, he has said that the deal with India is still on, just in a different way. And he's insisting that India, in his words, will be paying tariffs. So that leaves the world watching right now. Is this going to be a pause? Is it going to mean a renegotiation? Is this going to be a complete rewrite? So let's just understand this. Even as we're talking about the postponement of the negotiations, that was supposed to happen on the 23rd of February. Now that has been pushed back because of the Supreme Court ruling. So what next? Does this put India in a more pivotal position right now to be able to take this on and get a better deal than the 18% that we had negotiated on, something that was about to come to fruition just before the Supreme Court ruling came through, which is why the big question today, can India now strike a better deal? And we've got an excellent panel to discuss this with. Let me introduce you to them. For today, we've got Manishi Ray Chaudhary joining us, CEO of Enma Capital Partners. He's joining us along with Rajesh Mehta. Rajesh Mehta joins us as someone who represents the entire gems and jewelry sector, Executive Chairman of Rajesh Exports. We also have Pallab Banerjee joining us. He's Managing Director and CEO of Pearl Global to get us the textile perspective. Sangeeta Godbole is also with us, former trade negotiator for India, EU and the India FTA. Great to have you all with us. Welcome. Maybe I can ask you for a quick response first so that viewers know your stand up front. Short answers, about 15 seconds each, if I may request you. And also, through the show, please raise your hand the moment that you disagree with a co-panelist. I'll bring you in for a rebuttal for that as well. So let me ask for some crisp questions over here and answers very quickly. Pallab Banerjee, to you first. This shift that we're talking about, textiles and apparel, from 18 to 15%, are you expecting immediate order wins in the next 4 to 6 weeks? And how does that tariff reset impact your sector and your business in particular?
Not a very big change. Good thing for the US retailers because they get some kind of leeway of about 5%, because most of the imports that they were doing in my sector has been coming from many other countries were at 19 and 20%. So that means their cash flow gets better by almost about 5%. That's the immediate relief that they might get. And then let's see how it transfers into order books.
Well, we'll see exactly how that works. But Shantanu Singh, from your perspective, Section 232, tariffs of 25 to 50%, they are still in force. This new 15% tariff capped at 150 days, you think India is legally better positioned today than it was 72 hours ago?
Definitely. What we're looking at is the president using his authority to address balance of payment deficits under the Trade Act of 1974. But as you said, this authority is time limited. It's also capped at 15%. But we should pay attention to the commentary that's coming out of the USTR's office. What we are being told by the USTR is that they're going to use this 150-day period to initiate investigations under something called the Section 301. And these are basically to investigate whether the trade partners have unfair trade practices which hurt US commercial interests. And I would imagine the strategy is that once these 301 investigations are over, the tariff that was imposed in 2025 and adjusted throughout the year would be reconstructed and put in place again, and the trade deal will have to be adjusted to for us to adjust to this new reality.
Yes. Sangeeta Godbole, what's your perspective as a trade negotiator? The core pressure which was about shaping this India-US deal was the threat of the escalating American tariffs. Now, that has weakened after the Supreme Court ruling. Do you think it gives India materially stronger negotiating leverage today compared to what we've seen last week only?
Well, the short answer and the honest answer is that nobody knows today. I've been reading up so much of commentary, but really at this point, nobody knows who is where and what, right? What really are the tariffs? And tariffs is not day to day, right? It is for, so far we have known that MFN tariffs at least are for good. Like industry always knows, okay, US may bechna hai, so this is the tariff. It is 0 or 4.5 or whatever it is. Now today our industry doesn't really know. Not even industry, people like me who are watching it, we have no clue, like where is this going to land? Is it going to be investigation? Will Trump come up with something new? Will they come up with something new from their hat? So my understanding is that, and I've been reading so many people from Europe and commentating,
yes,
nobody really knows.
So nobody knows right now, which is why we're getting in the experts and perhaps people from industry as well. Rajesh Mehta is also here. He represents gems and jewelry. This move, Mr. Mehta, from 0 to 15%, is this going to push the American business for you into any kind of margin pressure? Can you pass through that price increase without losing customers, you think?
Well, in items like gem and jewelry, 15% is a huge amount.
Yes.
This 15% or 18%, it's a very big amount, because there, if it is jewelry, you're talking about gold. So you add 15% to the value of gold, because the duty which will be charged will be on the invoice value. So that will be gold price also in the value. It will be too much. Adding 15% is like, charging 15% customs duty in India when you import gold. So that will be a similar scenario in the US. So as far as gold and diamond is concerned, it becomes very difficult with 15% or 18%, because earlier it was zero under GSP, General System of Preferences, it was zero. So I think 15% for jewelry business, I don't think is going to work. It is very, very difficult.
Very difficult, you're saying, for the jewelry business. But Manishi Ray Chaudhary, the Supreme Court having struck down Trump's reciprocal tariffs, now that the White House has gone for a global 15% tariff for 150 days, 55% of Indian exports have reverted to the most favored nation status. So from a global investor lens, do you think this is like a tailwind or a headwind for India in the near term at least?
Well, the immediate, knee-jerk reaction is obviously positive because, as you rightly pointed out, that there are certain silos within Indian exports which actually go from 15% to zero, right? But at the same time, we must also remember that for certain other sectors where India, till recently, with that 18%, supposedly 18% tariff, had some kind of an advantage compared to their competitors, particularly in the ASEAN countries, some of those advantages would also vanish. So it becomes kind of a level playing field. So, at this point of time, and I would actually echo what I heard just now from the trade expert, that right now nobody knows. It's a complete unknown, uncharted territory that we are getting into. This is only valid for 150 days. There are investigations that are being instituted against certain countries or certain sectors. So things may change very rapidly. So, the knee-jerk reaction in entire Asia today has been very positive, particularly in China. But it is something that we have to wait and watch for if we are to judge its sustainability.
But when you kind of do that right now, when you're competing with China, in the apparel sector, Pallab Banerjee will tell us about the competition that is between Vietnam and Bangladesh for us. Do they have the edge on landed costs? What is one operational lever, Mr. Banerjee, when it comes to pricing or the lead times or the working capital? What would you pull immediately right now to be able to remain competitive in this kind of situation?
So what's happening for Bangladesh and Vietnam, the goods that was getting exported were landing in USA with 20% from Vietnam and with 19% from Bangladesh. That was the additional tariff, reciprocal tariff that was in place. So that gets converted into 15% Section 122 tariff after this ruling and President invoking this new clause. Now, going forward, what's going to happen? That's a question mark. But for now, I think this advantage of 5% is something that, or 5 or 4%, that something will go to the importing companies. Whether these markets compared to India, yes, India was playing in this garment sector, the sector that I'm representing. We were limited to more of cotton products in India, and Bangladesh and Vietnam was doing a multiple product. And because Bangladesh and Cambodia, and to a certain extent Vietnam, had other FTAs across the globe, as a result, there were a lot of, not actually FTA, but yeah, they had this tariff benefit from other countries, because of which the industry really developed and really investments were going in at a very fast rate over the last couple of decades. So that's something India is coming into a level playing field, because we have done similar kind of FTAs with other countries. And with US, I think all of us are in the same, same level playing field as on date. What will happen after the investigation? Which country gets singled out? We don't know as of yet.
Correct.
Yeah, India, we were clubbed with Russia earlier. There was some dialogue with Iran, clubbing it with Iran. So those are the concerns that we may have in our bucket. Similarly, Vietnam was clubbed with China. Bangladesh, I think, was more neutral so far. So we have to see how each one of them moves with the US administration.
Yes, so much to kind of see, but then where is the positioning going to be? And meanwhile, what do businesses do? What about your business, Mr. Mehta? The refund uncertainty. Are you going to be filing for duty refunds that have already been paid? Or you tell us if the American buyers are reopening their contracts or pushing for the discounts after this move to 15%. How is it panning out even as we speak?
No. Do you really think that with a person like Donald Trump, you can ever think of getting any refund?
You don't think it's possible?
It is just impossible, because the US Supreme Court might have said that the duty is illegal, but even the US Supreme Court has not talked anything about refund. So if you want to get refund, that is, who will get the refunds? The refunds will have to be got by the people who have imported the goods. So if they want to get refunds, then they have to open an entirely new litigation with the government of US, telling that, okay, this was illegal, so now you give me a refund. They have to go to the court and do all those things. So that is, I don't think there is any possibility of getting any refund as such. It is going to be, in fact, if you heard Mr. Trump in his press conference, he very clearly said that anybody who wants to have refund, okay, it will be a 5-year process. We'll see after that.
Let me take that across. Let me take that across to Shantanu Singh. He's nodding vigorously. You agree?
One of the questions that, as Mr. Mehta noted, one of the questions that the Supreme Court left open was the issue of refunds. Although there had been representations by the US government at different stages in different levels of the proceeding that they will make refunds as long as the Supreme Court or the court before which the case was does not stay the tariffs. Now that the tariffs have been struck down, the question that remains is how refunds will be made. Mr. Mehta, I think, is right in saying that this will need to be litigated at the lower level, and this is what the Secretary of the Treasury has confirmed in interviews just today morning, I think.
So, I mean, yes, at this point in time, you can kind of expect the refunds now to come through. But Sangeeta Godbole, what exactly happens in a situation like this, given that the most favored nation reversion for a majority of India's exports, now that we have that in place, do you think this shifts the rebalance negotiating power in India's favor at all? Is this the moment for India to push for rebasing the tariff schedule altogether?
But if you see the order that the US government came up with, the White House, it says as soon as practicable. So what does as soon as practicable mean? Reverting all these tariffs, implementing the Supreme Court judgment. In India, it can mean anything, right? As soon as practicable. In US, what does it mean? At this point, one really doesn't know what is happening at the US borders. And the second one is also that these deals that Trump made with all the other countries, are they now valid or not? Because the promises were on part of the partners to bring everything down to zero and so many hundred other things, which would help the US. So whether that stands or no, even on that, the jury is out. So as of now, we don't really know. And I think the Indian delegation has done the right thing, not going for the negotiations at this point, because unless there is some clarity on where all this is going to go, how can you decide what concessions do you give, whatever have you given, how can you, roll back on those, how can you walk back on those, what should you ask the US, what kind of certainty and all that. So I think at this point, at least from the trade negotiations perspective, the best thing is to just keep watching and making your own and trying to understand at least what all this is going to go through, because nothing, as I said, nothing is certain.
Yes.
Even those deals that Trump had made, we are not sure if they are certain or not. So this is the status.
But Banishi Ray Chaudhary, looking at all this uncertainty that Sangeeta Godbole is also pointing out, she made it upfront that we don't know at this stage. But what are the markets sensing? Because typically the markets seem to know before everyone else does. What's your sense? The brokerage notes that we are reading, they suggest the sectoral tariffs may actually replace the blanket tariffs. And now we're seeing the dollar. It likely stays soft. Refunds up to the $175 billion globally. That is a very uncertain picture. But what's your base case for FII flows right now and the trajectory of the Indian rupee this week? Tell us what would flip that view that you may have on this.
Absolutely. So that's an interesting point, because it kind of gives me two different questions in the garb of one. Let me answer your second question first, which is what happens to the rupee? In terms of any, uncertainty as far as the US fiscal situation is concerned, the rupee tends to depreciate. It tends to depreciate relative to the developed market currencies, particularly the euro. And of late, over the last 1 to 1.5 years, it's also been depreciating relative to the emerging market currencies. So if we are now questioning whether the United States government will have to repay about 150 to 175 billion, or at least that route of revenue to the US government would shut down for now, then that degree of uncertainty increases. And that's why we have seen the US dollar depreciate today. It will continue to do so for the foreseeable time horizon. Now, this actually leads me to your first question. This is obviously a good news as far as emerging markets are concerned. If the US dollar depreciates, money tends to move away from the United States and more into emerging markets. We have seen this repeatedly over the last several decades. So that's actually good news as far as emerging markets are concerned. We have seen that reflected in most Asian markets today. We have seen China, Hong Kong, even
Yes.
some of the Southeast Asian markets very sharply up
Correct.
today. And I think the near term is pointing us in that direction.
Certainly.
The fundamentals are, of course, a different story. That's where North Asia scores handsomely over India at this point of time. So that relative trade of preferring North India would continue for some more time.
So certain pockets, of course, like Mr. Banerjee represents the textiles, the apparel business right now. He's part of our panel. Certain pockets are going to find this more advantageous than others, already benefiting from 18% down to 15%. But Mr. Banerjee, do you believe that India can now push for that sub 10% tariff access, given that American tariff leverage now has weakened?
I would dare to think so. I'm not negotiating, so I'm not an expert on that. But yes, this could be a good opportunity, as it sounds, like from whatever information we have so far.
Yes.
Yes, like if the tariff could be in the 10 to 12% range and a bilateral trade agreement compared to the other South Asian countries, so then we can have advantage in this manufacturing sector at the where we have to employ a lot of people, and that's what I think India's priority is.
How hopeful are you, Mr. Mehta? With that reciprocal tariff pressure gone, should India, you think, now press to restore that zero duty access? Do you think we would do that? Do you believe that Washington now actually has less bargaining power to refuse that from India?
Maybe it will be another 3 years till when Mr. Trump goes. That is very important.
Not hopeful at all.
Because what is happening is jiski lathi uski bhais.
Right.
Means whatever comes, sometimes it is 15%, sometimes 18%, sometimes 50%, sometimes 25%.
Right.
There are enough provisions in the American system
Right.
to levy extra duties if required.
But Mr. Mehta, ये लाठी तो थोड़ी टूट गई है इस time.
लाठी टूटी नहीं है, लेकिन लाठी थोड़ी ले ली गई है, लेकिन उससे बड़ी लाठी दूसरी लेकर आ गया है. वो हुआ है बेसिकली. तो ये क्या है? This is a highly uncertain scenario. In fact, India should push for zero tariffs, which
Right.
it is difficult to get because the entire mindset over there is very different. He is simply telling people were ripping off our country. Now I have stopped that, and now I will ensure that all the products which come from outside are dutiable here.
Right.
So he doesn't want to give free duty to anybody. That is his mindset.
Correct.
And being an American president, I don't think anybody can challenge it.
So how
That's
far
the
can the
only-
renegotiation go, Sangeeta Godbole? Should India reopen the deal architecture and target the outcomes that would be better than the 18%, the blended burden?
Yes, definitely. I think that now that India has signed a deal with EU, we must move on and also sign a deal with the US, provided we get the favorable and a balanced trade deal. And the other thing also, what Mr. Mehta just said, we must also develop our own legislative toolbox to be able to take such actions. Otherwise, we have nothing. Once we commit to an FTA, we don't have anything apart from anti-dumping or our regular MFN duties. But you see, US, even if one tool fails, they have got 5 others with which to use and increase their tariffs. India does not have any such tools, I would say again, and therefore we must improve our legislative capabilities and our legislative act so that we get this kind of force with us.
So, Shantanu Singh, based on this Supreme Court ruling and the 150-day cap and the MFN reversion, you think India can legally and strategically negotiate a deal that is better a better structure than the 18% that we've got, both sides working on something that would be on the renegotiation table without the Americans losing face, because that's going to be an important piece for Trump himself.
I would definitely first like to echo Ms. Woodbull's point that the Indian legislative trade legislations need to develop an external dimension, because the world of trade is so complex now that you need to have both shields and weapons to work within it. To your question, I was delighted to hear what the panelists had to say about renegotiation. It's very interesting that the joint statement that was announced on 6th February, it has this clause which says that which in effect says that if the US were to lower or adjust its tariffs, the other country, India, could adjust its commitments. So we are yet to understand what it specifically means, but this could be a space where India could start to push back on the kind of ask that we have seen in the joint statement so far.
Yes.
Even push for interest that it has, as we heard from other panelists on textile sectors, gems and jewelries. So credit to the negotiators who did anticipate this situation. Let's see if it works out with the intent that they had.
Well, let's see. This tariff reset is still unfolding, and as always, the devil is going to be in the details, from the MFN reversions to the Section 232 to what India can now realistically renegotiate. We're going to keep tracking every twist and, of course, what it means for Indian exporters, the markets, the road ahead for the India-US deal. A lot hinges on that. A big thank you to my panelists for joining us with their insights. Manishi Ray Chaudhary, Rajesh Mehta, Sangeeta Godbole, Pallab Banerjee, Shantanu Singh. Thank you for cutting through the noise and bringing us some amount of clarity to what has been an extraordinary, fast-moving 72 hours in global trade. Many thanks. And that about wraps it up on this edition of The Big Question. But of course, the question is still out there. Can India renegotiate a better deal? We are keeping track of that story. Every nuance we'll be on top of. But for the moment, from me, Vikram Oza, and the entire team, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening.